But our concern is she said she had the records on her desk generally. And I know in our lawsuit, they told us she had no records. So something's wrong. Either they don't know how to deal with FOIA or basic transparency law, or they're kind of panicking and just trying to move past this by saying like silly things like, we're not going to give you any more records about this issue.
That is Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. For those of you who may not know who he is, he does great work specifically in respect of access to information, demands for communication of documents, and receiving those documents. And we've actually been talking about it somewhat on the show on the Sunday nights with Viva and Barnes Law for the People, that Tom Fitton has been voicing some frustration that the documents that he's getting back subsequent to FOIAs are heavily redacted or non-responsive. And that even as relates to FOIA requests for documentation from the Biden administration that Tom Fitton has been requesting via FOIA, they've been coming back redacted for no apparently good reason, whereas the unredacted documents might be mildly compromising for the Biden administration. And this Epstein debacle is not letting up. And then some people are going to say, well, of course it's not letting up because the shills and the hacks on the internet are just doing it for clicks. That is the most disingenuous, insincere accusation on earth. Amazing thing. I was getting ready to respond to someone's tweet yesterday that I'm glad I reached out privately and said, how did you mean this? Was this sarcasm, or was this really the most judgmental thing you could have pulled? It was bad sarcasm, or at least bad attempted sarcasm, which translates relatively badly on the internet. But in, going to respond to this accusation, which no one has made of me because it's not true. And anybody who makes the accusation is a dirty, rotten liar. Haha, it's not true, period. I was going back on all of my covering of the Epstein situation over half a decade. I remember where I was when Epstein took his own life. And by the way, I'm not harping on the Epstein was killed conspiracy. I won't belabor the point. Even if Epstein took his own life, that's a conspiracy that needs answers for. That's not an answer in and of itself. Yep, he took his own life. Nothing we could do about it. But I was going back on some of my videos on the subject, and holy crab apples. Does anybody remember this, Viva? I was in New Brunswick, 2019. I had just gotten judgment in a Régie du Logement, which is the administrative tribunal for rental board cases. I had a case that was before the Régie du Logement, the rental board. We had, I think it was close to 20 days of trial before the rental board tribunal, because my client was the landowner, property owner, and was being accused of mold infiltration, chemical sensitivities, all this stuff. And it was an ever-moving goalpost of complaints. We had experts come in. There was no mold. There was no toxic chemicals, whatever. It was a very beautiful multi-level property. We had 20 plus days of hearing. It spanned over a year and a half. And we got a judgment that was a smashing victory on all fronts. And I got it as I was on vacation, our annual road trip. And I was in New Brunswick, beautiful province. And this was after days and days of Epstein. They're going to kill him. They're going to kill him. Bada bing, bada boom. He got killed. I'm not playing the whole thing, but look at this.
All right, you have all been asking for a vlog on Jeffrey Epstein. I wasn't going to do one because I didn't think I had anything insightful to add to the conversation, but something happened today which I found to be very fateful.
No, that's very loud. Okay, whatever. That's when I had that corny. I love the music, but it's not fit. Everything I said in that video is as true today as it was 6 years ago. And then there was periodic updates as there were breaking details. I don't think Trump is in the file, period. Whether or not someone within the administration might be tangentially related in that it's embarrassment, whatever, possible. You know who's been oddly silent on all of this? Bill Clinton, Bill Gates. Some of the biggest players have been oddly silent at the situation, as if to say, let's not jinx the non-release of the non-existent files. But the bottom line, trying to shame anybody into demanding answers and voicing frustration is disingenuous. It's almost it's beyond gaslighting. It's insulting. Not that feelings matter, but to say to somebody, you're the problem for asking for answers for something that you've been asking for answers from for 6+ years, and that everyone was saying, yeah, we need answers, we need answers, we need answers. Whoop, no more answers, nothing's going to happen. Disingenuous, and it's also not the way elections are won. It's the way successes are washed away under the bridge. And so Tom Fitton voicing some frustration. He's a good man. He's been an ally of the administration, of conservatives for years. And so you don't get to write him off. The odd thing here is that in the wake of the non-disclosure, because there's no file to disclose. It's on my desk, but we don't know what the it is, and we don't want to, if someone misspoke, fine. There's no client list. He killed himself. No incriminating blackmail. Move on. there's no client list, but we can't release the information because it would re-victimize the victims, as if what anybody's looking for in this is CP or CSAM. And then the latest one is the file is irremediably, irreparably corrupt, and therefore it's going to be basically useless to release it. Well, those are many, many ways of gaslighting everybody and causing a great many people to have questions where they might not have even had questions in the first place. The one that's actually amazing, I was watching Joe Neerman. Joe Neerman had a good take on this. He's like, you can't blame people for wanting answers. You can't blame people for saying, for being unsatisfied with there's nothing there after years of there's something there, never let it go, never give up on it. Joe had this to say, I'll play a bit of it.
The outrage that MAGA has been expressing toward President Trump and his administration for the last week to 10 days over the Epstein debacle is not because they came out and told us that the evidence that they have indicates that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, nor is it because they said that the evidence they have indicates that there was no client list. Most of us were sufficiently savvy to recognize that deep state puppets like Merrick Garland and Chris Wray were likely to destroy any incriminating evidence relating to third parties before you guys would get in there.
Fast forward, the end of this, the moral of the story is be cops, go in and reinvestigate from the beginning. I'm like revisiting this as we go along, and life can only be understood backwards, yet must be lived forwards. Do we all remember the incident that a year of email inbox during the critical period of Jeffrey Epstein case went missing from Alex Acosta's email account? Alex Acosta is the one who struck the sweetheart plea deal with Jeffrey Epstein, who, according to the Daily Beast, back in the day said, yep, I was told he's intelligence. I was told to leave him alone. A year of emails during the critical period disappeared from his inbox. I still have my emails from my practice of law on my own from 2010 and on. We back them up, because if we don't back them up and I get audited by the Bar Society, I get in trouble. But by the way, it wasn't only his email address, email account. So, it's nothing suspicious about that. As if you want to delete incriminating, potentially information, you would only do it on the one account where it would be. You'd do it across the board and say, oh, system-wide failure. What can we do? Wash our hands of it. No harm, no foul. It's not going away. Had the excuse been from the very beginning, you will never be able to trust the file, so there's no point in releasing a corrupted file from the FBI that is a criminal organization under Biden. Merrick Garland, James Comey. If that were the excuse, that should have been given as excuse number one. And incidentally, nobody would have had a problem believing that. That's been my theory from the beginning. That was one of my objections from the beginning. How can you make conclusions based on a file that was prepared by criminals? Everybody wants to go 4D, 5D, 728D chess. One thing that is the upside from all of this controversy is that you literally have Democrats clamoring now for the release of an Epstein file that we are told doesn't exist. You have Democrats now who are basically conspiracy theorists demanding the release of the Epstein files. And you have, I think, one of the only, if not the only reasonable Democrat I've ever met in my life. I want to see if the chat's good. You might know the answer because I've shared the anecdote, but when I was in DC, I saw a couple of politicians talking outside. It was talking about a bill that would, something about limiting spending in elections. And I'm like, oh, this actually sounds reasonable. And I see the government official, is he a senator or congressman? And I go like, I want to hate this guy, but what he's saying isn't ridiculous. And I go look through my Twitter feed, and it's the only Democrat politician who's active on social media that I've never had an issue with. Well, you're going to know because it's in the title. What an idiot I am. It's Khanna. So Khanna puts out an amendment to whatever bill is currently before Congress saying, like, let's have an amendment to compel the release of the Epstein documents. But before we get to the wording of that bill and what I believe is some sincere but sincerely wrong interpretations of it, it's unanimous across the board. And it makes me sick to my stomach that you actually have these jackass scumbags, Gavin Newsom. Not talking about Khanna right now because I still think I like Khanna. The scum of the earth, Gavin Newsom, is actually like, these are layup gimmies that he's been given for political fodder. Axios, the one who broke the story originally about the memo that concluded that Epstein killed himself, there was no client list, and there was no blackmail material, unsigned, undated. They say House Republicans block Democratic maneuver to force release of Epstein files, and we have the article. Then Gavin Newsom, with the easiest, you've given him a golden goose for a week or so, just so he can put out these cheap, easy layup tweet gotchas. Why try so hard to block a list that, quote, doesn't exist? Wait, this is like, it's a low-level Twitter troll, but it's Gavin Newsom level Twitter troll that's been handed to him for no better reason. Who else? Kevin Spacey. You got Kevin Spacey, people, coming out now saying release the Epstein files. All of them. For those of us with nothing to fear, the truth can't come soon enough. I hate to make this about me, but the media already has. He's got a point. I did ask him in response to this, and a sincere question, like, did he ever visit Epstein's Island? No culpability, although I do think anybody who went to Epstein's Island is culpable of something, but maybe that's judgmental of me. You got Kevin Spacey coming out right now and saying, release the Epstein files. Who else was it? Oh, Hakeem Jeffries, for once in his entire life, made some sense talking about the Epstein files and releasing them. Only two things can be true. You know, when they spent a few years talking about how important the file was, release it, getting to the bottom of it, they were telling the truth then, or they're telling the truth now. There's a little bit of nuance in between, but set that aside. When Hakeem Jeffries is being given law balls to smack a home run with, you're doing something wrong, people. And I say that out of love, not out of any hatred. Who was the other one? Yes. The woman who, strong suspicion that they would not have been unhappy had things turned out differently on July 13 in Butler, Pennsylvania. Nikki Haley says, release the Epstein files and let the chips fall where they may. This is why people don't trust the government. You can never go wrong with being transparent. Redact victims' names, but release the rest. You're making Nikki Haley make sense, for goodness sake. Some people want to think it's 3D chess. All right, they got Democrats acknowledging the existence of a list, confirming the existence of it, and demanding the release of it. Some people are going to say, well done, Trump. You played them. They asked for it. Give it to them. But the problem is this: when you have stories like that from Axios saying Republicans are blocking the proposed amendment to compel the release of the Epstein files, you know what they're going to do with that. Like you don't have to be a scoundrel to think like one. I was a lawyer for 13 years. I can think like a scoundrel. It's how you have to anticipate what a scoundrel's going to do to you. The only problem is it's a little difficult to keep up with the truly smart scoundrel. There's one lawyer in particular. He knows who the hell he is. I'm looking at you right now. If you're still alive, I don't know if you're still alive. So you don't have to be a scoundrel to think like a scoundrel. But you know damn well that if they put out an amendment asking the compulsion of the release of whatever the Epstein file is and Republicans block it, holy sweet merciful hell, what do you think Republicans would have said had the shoe been on the other foot and it was Biden's administration blocking the release of the Epstein files, or Clinton, or Obama? Yeah, this sort of spans Obama's era. You know what would be happening? You'd be screaming bloody murder, and rightly so. So Ro Khanna, thus far, the only reasonable Democrat I've ever seen, he's probably more of a centrist than a Democrat, said this.
Mr. Speaker, I introduced today an amendment demanding the full release of the Epstein files. The Speaker's Rules Committee should demand a vote tomorrow of every member of Congress. Yes, we should release it, or no, we should not. This is a question of whose side are you on? Are you on the side of protecting the rich and the powerful who've put their thumb on the scales of government to suck out millions of dollars while working class Americans suffer? Or are you on the side of the people? The Attorney General said on her desk was the Epstein file. And now she's saying, no, nothing to see. Don't release it. This is a question of trust. We need to release the Epstein files so we can restore government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And every member of Congress tomorrow should be forced to vote on this amendment.
You can hate Democrats, and you can acknowledge that a great many of them are the scum of the earth. Adam Schiff for Brains McSchiffface, Jerry Nadler, Nancy Pelosi, Gavin Newsom, Kathy Hochul, Gretchen Whitmer, Andrew Cuomo. I could name them all. You can't put Ro Khanna in that class right now. Maybe he's done something that I don't know about. Maybe he'll do something in the future. But for now, reasonable argument, reasonable proposal, and the amendment itself is not unreasonable. Here's the amendment. Amendment to Rules Committee Print 119.6, offered by Mr. Khanna of California. Add at the end of the following new section, Preservation and Release of Records. The Attorney General shall retain, preserve, and compile any records or evidence related to any investigation, prosecution, or incarceration of Jeffrey Epstein. B, not later than 30 days after the date of the enactment of this act, the Attorney General shall release and publish any records or evidence related to any investigation, prosecution, or incarceration of Jeffrey Epstein on a publicly accessible website. Sort of like what we had with the WikiLeaks. People can navigate, people can look through emails, people can look through the documents. The counter argument that you're hearing, they might be the center, they might be the right, they might just be people who think the argument holds water. And I say this with deference. I think it's a sincere misunderstanding. I don't think anybody's malicious in this argument. The argument that you're hearing from some is you can't release it because that would compel the production of CP, CSAM, that would re-victimize the victims. First of all, the argument, as far as I'm concerned, is probably more of a misunderstanding than a tenable argument. You would not have, by way of an amendment, an order for anyone to break the law. So it would go without saying that any production of documents would be within the rules of criminal law as relates to the production, reproduction, possession of CP or CSAM. So it goes without saying that it would be operating within the bounds of the law. Also, there would be procedure through which the AG, when releasing it, would clearly redact, censor, or not disclose anything that would be considered CP, CSAM, disclosing the identities of victims, witnesses, etc. So I think the argument is a non-starter from the get-go. That being said, if you think it's a concern, and I've tweeted this, you could add a very simple caveat. Let me see here. A, the Attorney General shall retain, preserve, and compile any records or evidence related to any investigation. That's fine because it doesn't compel production. Not later than 30 days after the date of the enactment of this act, the AG shall release and publish any records or evidence related to any investigation, persecution, or incarceration of Jeffrey Epstein on a publicly accessible website to the extent that such publication does not violate any existing rules of criminal law as relates to possession or distribution of CSAM or CP, something along those lines. I don't think it's necessary, but if it's necessary, that's as easy a fix as there is. Now, some people are hypothesizing, and you can't blame them, that it's such an easy fix that the reason why it wouldn't be in there is because Democrats want this as a talking point to say Republicans opposed it if they had a legitimate legal reason, knowing that they couldn't pass it this way because it might entail the production of documents that would violate the law. So some people are saying it's drafted deliberately like that so that Democrats know it would never pass, so that they can use the Republicans' refusal to pass it as a political cudgel against them, and that Democrats get the win, Republicans get the loss, and everybody rejoices because the Epstein file at the end of the day is not made public. I don't think so. I don't think that was Khanna's intention in drafting it this way, but to the extent anyone has any reticence about the possibility, add that caveat, except in as much is permissible under the criminal laws of the land, period. Problem solved. There were also some rumors that some people had gotten the call to shut up about the Epstein file. I think it was Luke Rudkowski who published this earlier today. I don't place much stock in this, but some people suggesting, yes, some people have changed their tune enough about the Epstein file because they got the call. And now they know to shut up because it's politically. Benny Johnson had reported that he had Laura Trump on his channel. She said, "Look, we've heard you. We're gonna work our butts off to release more documents, and that there's a change in tack." I believe that, but I don't. Do I believe that people got the call? No. First of all, everybody knows this is not helpful to the Trump administration. They don't need to be told that reporting the truth or highlighting this is not something that they would like to be celebrating at this point in time. The other reality is as well, you're not going to make it go away by ignoring it. What you're going to do actually is just for the people who are interested in it and the people who feel slighted by this, they're going to be quiet and they're going to move on and they're never going to vote again. And that's going to cause some problems. The other thing, at least the silver lining, even if it is true, it means the administration is listening and they know there's a very, very big problem here that needs to be remedied sooner than later. So I think that's the latest as to what's going on with the Epstein stuff. Let me make sure that I got all of this here. It's just amazing about that. I'm going back and like you're living life backwards when you go back and even re-listen to yourself from 6 years ago, reread articles from 6 years ago. And yeah, that's what's going on there. Democrats never do anything honestly, Viva. Yeah, like Khanna strikes me thus far as being the most honest and the most intellectually honest and sincere person that I've ever seen that puts a big D in front of the name. True, however, that I said this to Fetterman, if you consider the Democrats your party, then we might already have a problem. But until I have definitive evidence that Khanna is of bad faith, which I do not have, in fact, I have only evidence to the contrary, he'll get the benefit of the doubt and he'll get proper treatment. And then if I ever find out that he is an Adam Schiff level Democrat or a Gavin Newsom, well then, Twitter sass shall be tweeted accordingly, people. All right, peeps, that is as much as we're going to do about that. I just got the call. I'm told to move on to another subject. Bada bing, bada boom. I'm joking.